So this is a screen narrated screen movie of a fan art piece I did of the late Muhammad Ali, the boxer, and I went ahead and because it's fan art, I just went ahead and got an original and tried to get another photo and essentially uh, traced it, but I wanted to draw it and put it out there because he is a remarkable man and in African American history and Muslim American history, and yeah, I have a lot of other projects I'm working on, and so I said, well, let me try to do something quick. So in about an hour, I was able to put a lot of this together. So you're looking at you're watching the rough outline of the penciling where I'm trying to figure out what I want to use, where I want to use it. Eventually, I don't even stick with the original placement of the photo. And as you see, I use a little ruler there. I based this on the rule of thirds. So this is all done in Clip Studio Paint, and you see I got my layers in there. On the other screen, I have two monitors. I have color and things like that, but pretty much everything you need is here. And I decided to move them around and take a much better composition, and I move those, make my little pencil adjustments. And I don't necessarily follow this one because I am essentially tracing it, but the pencil kind of gives me a feel of how I want the lines to look. Excuse me. Hopefully it's on mute for that part. But let's see. So I wanted to make him look a little more heroic, muscular wise, but you can hardly tell. I just kind of thickened them up a little bit around the neck. Little artistic license there. And I pretty much stick with the G pen in Manga Clip Studio Paint. Now it's officially Clip, so I'll stick with that since that's what I already have. And the thing that distinguishes the features that distinguish people from their their characteristics are eyes, nose, and lips, and cheek. But especially those eyes, nose, and lips. And when you work on the expressions, you have to be careful, because sometimes the character can look really stiff. I've noticed. Their mouths aren't even moving, So I gave him a little bit more of open mouth, kind of like he's saying something. Like, watch out, whatever. And, as long as you have, I think I've noticed this, as long as, when you're working on real life, illustrations, as long as you have at least the one feature, you know, the eyes or the nose that match, then you can do what you want with the other stuff. You know, the shape of the head is important too, as far, especially if their hair is distinguished. Yeah. And so now you see I turned off the source image, and now I'm working on, you know, my little trace, and then I'm coming in with the black. And hairline is shows texture on the outside of the edge, but then when you're on the inside, like where his forehead is, usually that matches the contour of the the face. So and you know, you don't have to do every little bump in the head for curly hair. You just get the overall impression. You gesture it in, basically. And at the bottom, you want to make your lines when you do your line width. It's nice when you have a pressure sensitive tablet and pen, because then you can do a harder line at the bottom, softer line at the top, as far as in relation to the light source. And as you see, I'm just trying to work out basic outlines, because I know I'm going to build up the shading. But once you have a good outline, you know, it's easier to work with it. Sometimes you just got to scratch the outline in. So this is, again, this is fan art, so there's not going to be a whole lot of, it's not an original. I mean, I've done some original fan art, but sometimes you just copy something that's there. And that's what I'm doing. You know, the joints and fingers can be troublesome. You know, you start getting detail and too much detail. It's so easy to go over. As you see, I'm actually setting some of these layers to draft, because when I fill it in with Paint Bucket, it's reading the ruler, it's reading the source photo, so I have to change those to draft mode. Hit that little button with the little blue pencil, and what that means is when the paintbrush or bucket, when the bucket pastes it in, dumps the color in, it won't read the layers that you set to be draft. It's kind of like locking the layers, but you can still move them around and work on them. I think it's really, really nice function for Clip Studio Paint. And sometimes I like to build up the some of the deeper shadows in there. After that, I'll do a separate layer for shading, just because I like to be able to dump it in, scratch it out, dump it some back in, scratch it out. Yeah, lots of little techniques that I pick up. And see, there's the mouth that I was explaining before. You know, you really got to be careful with the mouth. You got to, you know, a mouth, eyes, nose, you really don't draw them as a continuous line. You gesture it in. You get the most important lines, and that gives the shape of the mouth. And see, I refer to my pencil layer because I had a shape that I liked, the way I did it. As you see here with the ink, you gotta be careful following your pencil layer. You go too far. You'll see I'll make an adjustment to the nostril there. And eyebrows are another one where you can easily overdo it. It's just not necessary in most cases. Oops, something fell. And inside the ears, sometimes you can gesture that. But even those can be tricky because these things distinguish people too, so you never know. You never know. And moving that brush around, just trying to get a little bit of shading in the primary layer. And now you see, now I'm going to start doing the heavy stuff. And you'll see how I work in the hair too. Hair is interesting when you have there's ways you can quickly show depth in hair with just big blotches of ink. I'm really trying to get that technique down. It works when you do it right. As you see here, I don't quite do it right, so I kind of fix it up. But eventually I get it right. And you'll see how I start doing the texture in the hair. And I'll kind of undo what I did. But sometimes when I do it like this, it helps me build up to it properly. And you're watching me work in progress. It's not anything I actually planned out. And now you'll see, because I went ahead and made a selection in there, and now I can start cutting away. And when you cut away like that, it really helps to bring out them highlights. And there's where you start to see the hair. So you have more closer to the edge, and then as you go away from the edge, you have less little cuts in the ink. I use the eraser tool for that. I don't use white. Lately I haven't been painting at all with white. I do my black outline. I treat white like a color, not as a highlight. So it's something I use to fill. And the white, I don't even use straight white, except for highlights, specular highlights. Yeah, those specular highlights are important to make pure white. And, working in those eyeshadow areas now. And basically, I'm just going to knock all that out eventually. You're seeing me work and try to figure this thing out. How do I make it more interesting? How do I make it so it's not like a trace or a copy? And I really I want to have that fist stick out. And then, see, now you see what I'm doing. I'm trying to build in a big, nice shadow. Give him some dimension, have him pop out. I like simple lines. And I figure I don't have forever to draw things anyway, so I might as well do some heavy contrast and give some things some depth. And there you go. There's some more of that heavy inking in there. It just makes it pop out, and I want the fist to really pop out, because that's his pose, you know. It's his superhero pose. And this was a trouble spot for me, because it's like there's highlight coming over his shoulder, but if I can give it some shadow, I can give it some depth. And so I was trying to work with it, and it just was looking really bad. I don't want him to look skinny either. I want him to have that little broad, that high shoulder too. And he isn't skinny. So and I might have, it looks pretty good light, and even when I colored it in, it kind of stayed dark. But you can always look back and say, oh, what could I have done better? And you know what? That's cool, but man, you just never get anything done if you just keep going back, especially if you're drawing, for a living, or trying to make lots of art quickly. And here's where I made the commitment to giving his side of his face the shading. And I'm having trouble. You're seeing me having trouble with the lines, closing the gap with the paint bucket tool, trying to figure out some gaps were too big, and so I filled them in. The closed gap function works really nice, but sometimes I'd rather not rely on it and just make sure my lines are tight. Make sure my lines are closed. So here I took the opacity of the black down. It just helps me to see things better. And I think when I do that kind of thing, sometimes you get unpredictable results, and sometimes they're very nice. So I ended up making it dark, but it wasn't pure black. But it was, it was like, I don't know, 80%, 75% black. That's what it ended up being. You know, when I'm inking my graphic novel, I can't do that with the inking level. It's got to be 100% black. But then I can do other things, as you'll see me do here. While I narrate, I'm actually working on the layout of the Badin and the Secret of the Sun, the graphic novel. I was compelled to do this portrait of Muhammad Ali when I saw some people on Facebook complaining about how he avoided the draft and he's not deserving of all this attention, and really annoyed me because back then, you know, it was really bad. Life was really hard for blacks in America. Treated really bad, poorly by the justice system, by the society. And Muhammad Ali's thing was, well, if I'm not going to get justice here, why would I go fight for this against someone who's never oppressed me? You know, why should I go to Vietnam? He said, the Viet Cong never called me a nigger. So, you know, I was, and then these people that complain about him, I know they had no desire to volunteer, especially not all of them, but a lot of them have no desire to volunteer themselves or their children to go fight in Iraq and Afghanistan or any other wars, you know, because they know it's ridiculous. But anyways, yeah, strange things inspire us. So I took an hour out of my time on the graphic novel to do this, and that's why I grabbed some other picture and I used it as a source. I'm sorry I can't credit it. I don't know. I just found it. And there was no credit on it. So that's why I believe in putting your name on your artwork. That way, if there's no metadata or your name isn't in the file name, at least it'll be on the picture. And of course, some people delete that stuff. So you saw me dump some color in with a color layer. I accidentally put it into my outline layer. And you see my recovery from that. And here's the whites of the eyes, making the eyes white. That's really important. If the character's eyes are white, it makes them look healthy and alive, vibrant, you know. I'm gonna give his eyes are brown, obviously, so want to be accurate with that. And this is a what you call the specular highlight, so it's kind of fiddling around. I figuring out how to stroke the selection. I think I accidentally cleared it out and whatever. So, but I want to make the specular highlights pronounced. Yeah. And then when you fill it in, you want to turn the scaling off. But scaling is really important function with Paint Bucket and Magic Wand tool in this program. Great tools, without a doubt. And I'm coloring the hair. This photo of Muhammad Ali, he was, I think he was already retired. So, I tend to, when it comes to black hair, very dark hair, like the color black, I tend to go with the old school comic book and kind of make it a shade of blue. So here I went with a shade of blue, but then I kind of desaturated it slightly and it became more like a shade of gray. I thought, this is good, this is good. And it kind of represents me and my stage in life too. Where I guess I'm assuming he was 40 something here like I am, so gotta relate to him somehow. And we're getting to the end here. I'm figuring out how to get those fingernail colors right. I didn't want them distracting, pulling your eye away from the subject. But I did want to make them a little lighter, a little more realistic. And here you see me working with a luminosity adjustment layer. I really like that. I like that for the coloring stage. I'll be doing that with my graphic novel. I like flat colors. It's just fun for me. It's less complicated. I'm not that talented as I tell people, so I got to make things a little easy. So I like thick. I like a lot of thick laid down ink, and then I'll do some a slight mid-tone type of shading, and then I'm happy with that. I mean, I've seen there's just some of the most beautiful comic books done in that style, and I figure, well, I can do it too. So that'll wrap it up. Hope you enjoyed this this little presentation of my work. I really admired the man, and I hope you do too. And if you don't know who he is, please do some research. Check him out. It's definitely a one-of-a-kind character in American history, a real important part of American culture. And there's his final touches. Oh, that'll be it. Thanks again. Goodbye.